So that's the hole we bored on the lathe. That's the point for the spindle to run through. So in the bottom of here we're going to put a M12 clamp nut. So there'll be a hole drilled through the bottom there, and then that fits into that. Clamp nut goes through, clamps down. I'm running out of fingers. Through clamps into the T-nut underneath. So basically that hole needs to have a flat bottom for the clamp nut to sit on, or I've got to make a radiused packer, if you like. So I thought it'd be good practice to do some internal work on the shaper and just square it out, give myself a flat bottom. That has the advantage then that I can take a ratchet spanner for an M12, which is 19mm, and go in there and then ratchet. But as I said, I want some practice cutting out these. I've got to cut some keyways in the project, and this is a good way of getting started. So your first problem is, move it over to the shaper. First problem is, how do you get a cutting tool to cut through that? You just zoom out so you get a bigger picture. So if I want to put that in there and then cut out those two black marked corners, I need what they call an internal bar, which is basically a boring bar, like we did use the other day. There. So it's basically one of those sat running out, and then the cutting bit is shaped so that it cuts on the forward stroke like that. So you need a boring bar holder. I haven't got one, so the project's on hold while I make one of those. And there's a few options. Some literally you take that out. It's only, you undo the tool, take the bits out, drop the tool lantern post out, and then you replace it with a bar which is, or a bar holder, which for all intents and purposes is that shape and a locking nut on it, and your cutting piece sits on the end. And you can make that so that it'll take different size or different diameter bars. So your bars have then got either a step down or a step up. So you're still keeping the clapper box assembly. The other option is to take off the clapper box assembly and make a completely fixed holder, which picks up on the two bolt holes, which is that one, and if you can remember, that one in the bottom there, which gives you basically a fixed setup so you can't pivot it. I guess you could if you duplicated the slot. I can't see why you would want to, because you should be able to rotate the bar in its hole. So for example, if you can cut either vertically down or up, or I guess at a push you could go sideways or at 45. So that's the second option. I've asked the question, what are the pros and cons of each, and there's as many answers for either. So what I'm probably going to do is to start off with just make one that'll fit onto that in replacement of that. So that's the simplest design that I could see. One of the other options is to take something like that assembly and have a bar fitted into this position. So we'll look at that next. So that's the basic multiple angle 3/8 bit holder. What I would be looking at doing is making use of the shaft. Probably make a new nut, because the thread's going to be imperial, probably American, given it's Williams, which is it Illinois? I can't remember now. forged in the USSA. So you've got a row of serrations there which are picked up on the other washer, so I'll try and reuse that and basically make a bar which would come through from, I think it's yeah, basically a step bar which would come along, carry the tool bit somewhere over here, clamp up to the face of that, which clamps through there, and then the bar comes through, picks up on that ID, and then a thread on a locking nut on the back. I've just got to try to match that radius as near as I can on the locking nut, which I think is probably going to be the quickest solution. All I'm trying to decide is, do I make a boss which fits that, which has then got just basically a parallel hole at this end with a locking bolt. So then the only tooling that I've then got to make for different sized keyways and bores is just the shaft and turn it on the end. I've not got to piss about making a thread on the end of it and getting all the other dimensions right. Need to have a bit of a head scratch and see what I can come up with. So this is where we're at. So we take the shaft and that fits on over there. We'll put an M20 thread on the back because I got a nut and a die. The washer sits there. The washer's actually got a slot which is 3/8. Actually, normally for taking the tool bit, so what I might do is just put something on the back of here so that it locks it in. Might be a bit pikey, but it'll do. And then an extension piece 40mm forward of that with a 20mm ID flat bottomed hole, and that's where the boring bars will fit. So that'll give me the option of making a number of boring bars from 20mm stock, or say 25mm stock, and coming down, which I think will pretty much cover everything I want to do. So we better get the hacksaw out and start chopping. Got a bit of blade drift. So we're just taking down the rear end of this to 24mm for the first section, and then down to 20mm for threading the second section. Taking 20 thou depth of cut. You can see the rate of feed. It's a 3-inch long section. 1 3/4 diameter coming down. Spitting little hot blue chips everywhere. I've just got to cock it up now by cutting an M20 thread on that. And so, looking at the thread, I've established that the original thread out of the back of this, sorry, that way round, is a 3/4 inch Whitworth fine, which from memory was 12 threads per inch. Which I can't cut. And the whole project is around making up a set of change gears for my lathe and giving myself the facility for making basically any type of gear, spur gear that is, without a load of investment once I've got the tooling made up. So we're going to use an M20, which is a 2.5mm pitch. There, it's not a huge difference, but you know, it's a slightly coarser thread. But I've actually got nuts and bolts, so I could just use a nut that I've got and make a curved washer to match that profile, so it fits into the rear end of that. So we'll set the lathe up now and start cutting the thread. So that's my threading position. So it's a 2.5mm pitch, so it's that. So I need the 50 tooth in position G, second gear lever in position C, which is there, and the first one directly underneath that one. And then that's got to be a 50 tooth, which is the drive off the tumblers, onto an intermediate gear, and then onto that one, which is the 45. So that's all set up. The idea of the project is to basically make myself a set of change gears for this, which will enable me to produce a imperial gear using a metric lead screw. So I need a 135 tooth against a 127 tooth as a compound for the conversion, and I think there's 6 or 7 other tooth gears to make up all the different thread combinations. So that's what we're planning on doing. So I now need to dig out my 60° threading tool. So we're just setting up the 60° thread cutting tool. You can't see it very easily because of the angle and angle, but I use a little short steel rule, very thin, to set my height. So that's got to be 90 degrees to the cross slide, and it is. And then we do a bit of pissing about, loosen off the tool post. And this is a 60° side. I set that onto the tool bit, and then basically wiggle the tool post around until it touches along, which is done. So that's us set up now. I'm going to bring the tailstock in, give us a bit of support, make sure we've got the carriage running in the right direction. That's always good for a bit of a giggle, and we'll see how we get on. Well, as usual, I forgot to set the compound. So we'll just bugger about and reset this up again. So we've got that move. It's nipped, but it's not tight, so it'll adjust in. There has to be a better way of lining that up. Bugger. I don't know what it is. I did see, and what I've always fancied making, is a jig to grind these sort of dedicated angle tipped tools. So basically single point threading tools, whether they be Acme or Whitworth or metric, that would set it so that that angle is equal and that's parallel to the face of the chuck, so you can then just set it parallel to the side of the tool. But because I hand grind mine, because I haven't got a jig sorted out, and I can't remember, I watched somebody's video on YouTube and they were making one of these grinding jigs which enabled them to basically plonk the tool into the jig, lock it onto a magnetic chuck, and then grind it, release the chuck, rotate the jig onto its next face, and they would grind those two angles and the relief angles, which was a good idea. Unfortunately, my brain capacity doesn't allow me to sit and work out how that sort of a jig had been made. I think we're there on that. And then just to make sure we've got the compound set right, we wind it out like that. That's it. Tickety boo. So we're doing a scratch pass and I'm using the thread dial indicator. The good news is we're threading in the right direction. And then I use my thread gauge and just check them, and that's looking good. So my dials are all set to 0, so the compound stays where it is. We come back one full rev on the cross slide, back it up in a rev, and then put the cut on with the compound. And what's nice is it's picked up on exactly the same lines. Put a dribble of oil over it all. I've never been really able to feel it in on the half nuts. I know guys like Joe Pye on his channel says you should be able to feel it in. Always find it impressive watching guys like Bruce Witham, and he's cutting a right hand thread but running the lathe in reverse, so he's running away from the chuck. Jesus, it's fast. I'll definitely cock it up. Aside from which, my chuck thread's on, so probably end up with the chuck bouncing off the lathe. course, having a chamfer at the start would have helped. I'm happy with that. So we'll put a bit of a lead in on the end of that and call that part of it done. Not bad. You have to excuse the handheld, but that's where we're at now. I've just knocked up a little washer. It's a little bit small on diameter really, but it'll do for my purposes. So the next job is to come up with some kind of locking mechanism into that groove. What I might do is cut a keyway here, just fit a key. I could do one each side for that matter. I've got plenty of substance there, nearly half an inch of material there. Doesn't need to be very big, and that enables me then to lock this to the washer, which will lock the position into those serrations. So then if I loosen the nut and rotate it around the serrations, I'm effectively moving the tool around and locking it off. So that's the next bit. The other part of it is when you're running the boring bar on an internal cut, a keyway for example, you lock off the clapper box. Now the sort of normal approach that I've seen is a threaded hole here and just basically a mechanical fit something over the top there. Having said that, I've seen quite a few shapers where the clapper box has been broken out here as a result of a jam, so I'm slightly reluctant to do that. However, when that goes back, clonking on the end of that there, I'm wondering whether if I make a small piece that sits over here and basically fills that gap, which will achieve all the same, it'll stop the thing rocking. More importantly, I'm not drilling holes in anything. So I think that's probably the way I'll go. So I need a reasonably accurate measurement there, and then just make something like a C-section that will fit over and fill that gap. That's the plan. So bit of work to do yet. So that's where we're up to now. The locking nut's on. Made a reasonable job of that. There's no very small amount of wobble on that. I've put together a small washer with a curved face. It's a bit small. Must be probably what, 1/4 of an inch bigger in diameter. But I haven't got an off-cut of steel yet that's handy, and I'm not setting up the saw just to cut that. So the next job is to now come up with a method of locking this piece to that. The obvious choice is to try and pick up on those somehow. As I mentioned earlier, the nice one would be to set a pair of dogs in here, but I just can't think of a way to do that. I could drill through, I suppose, and square that hole out, put something in. Yeah, not convinced. The other way is to basically cut a slot down here. It doesn't actually have to be parallel with that surface, it could be going at an angle, and then just cut a piece of key steel, knock it in, do one each side, and that would suffice. That's probably the way I'm going to go. We shall see. But yeah, we're getting there. Bit of work to do. After various disasters, including sweeping the chimney and having the hoover bag burst, and then sweeping the rest of the house, we're back in the workshop. Been giving some thought as to how to generate the dogs on the back of that to connect with that, and I've come up with a couple of options. The one which is probably most likely to guarantee a success would be to clamp it on the mill table like that, and then run a straightforward 3/8 M mill down into it. So I'm going in something like 6 mil and 10 mil down. Take it out, spin it round and repeat. But as it's a piece for the shaper, I'd quite like to do everything on the shaper. So then I started to think, well, how can I cut a slot in here to take a dog to protrude? I think it's 2.5 mil. If I want to run the shaper that way into it and cut it parallel with the axes of that, I'd have to create some relief at this end, which means drilling a hole. And given that I haven't got an awful lot of material, I'd probably have to do it with a slot mill, in which case we're up on the mill again, which kind of defeats the object. The other way would be to actually hold it in the vise. So instead of if that's the tool head, instead of the tool going like that, actually hold it at an angle and either come in from this side. So this is a relief, which is probably going to be the only way of doing it. It's a bit tight to do it that way, which is, I think, the way I'm going to end up doing it, on the basis of if I then cock it up and it moves or whatever, I can always take it out, stick it on the mill and mill it. Well, I was going to video it, but I can't get my camera into the position. I've marked it out for slotting it. I've stuck it in the V blocks, taken the height, taken off half of the height, half of the diameter of that it's where it's sat. I've then taken off from the diameter position. I've come down half of 3/8 of an inch and then gone up half of 3/8 of an inch and scribed basically lines to the guidelines. The only thing I've got to do now is scribe the depth in, and then we'll try and set it up. Well, that's the setup. I ended up putting a toolmaker's vise in to set the angle, so that all I do is loosen that, rotate it, line it back up vertically, clamp it back up. Everything else should stay the same. Just got to make sure I get that position, that depth the same, and then I haven't got to piss about moving the stroke. I'm taking it slow because it's not the most rigid of setups. Ooh. Bugger. Yeah, so basically decided might as well just get it done on the mill and cut the 2 slots. So that's the dry, well, not dry, that's just the dog fitted. I cut a piece of steel, a nice snug fit, pressed it in, and then I've pinged it round and then blended it in. You can still see the original marks for the dot punch. So yeah, so far so good. Well, it's not exactly an invisible joint, but it's better than it was. It's nice and tight in, and that will do the job. So all that's left now is cut a piece of bar to make my tool holder or bit holder, and use the same piece of bar to make a bigger washer off the end, I think. And I'm just drilling and tapping 2 M8 holes, and I'm using the tapping handle that came in the what's in the box video, contestant winning thing doodah. I've got it at the videos for how to make it on my to play and watch later list. Just need some YouTube time. It's nice though, nice crisp nail on it. And the taps from Marcus. Cheers, bud.